Yeah, you can't do bam, 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 bam.
I can't.
You gotta do something different.
I gotta figure.
Boop,
Beep,
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 boop, boop, okay. Okay.
Just the bestest from a fiestas.
Oh, Lord almighty. All right, well, welcome to 64 Bits of Rage, our new podcast.
Ooh,
Ooh.
We've hinted at it.
We've hinted at it. There's been some hintsy brinskies. We figured we'd branch off into more of a... That was unnecessary. That was kind of cool.
When he, jumped and slid into the bread box. That's awesome.
We decided to dive into more Nintendo 64, hence our Nintendo 64 Bits of Rage. So, this is more of our Nintendo-themed, I think I've said Nintendo 5 more times, themed-based podcast compared to PlayStation. Granted, we've crossed paths in both of them. Obviously talked about the Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo all at once before, but this is more strictly just Nintendo for my thoughts.
Yeah, it'll be pretty much like the sister podcast or the companion podcast to Rage Quit. So
yep.
Rage Quit is primarily Sony centric or PlayStation centric. So this one will be Nintendo centric.
Yeah.
One of our goals for ASInquisitor as far as streaming and just video game content in general is to try to include the Nintendo Switch as almost an equal partner to the PlayStation 4 and soon to be PlayStation 5. So we're going to try to cover both, and then eventually sometime during this year I will start streaming Nintendo Switch games. So.
Yeah, I'm going to get a capture card for that though. Plus, it's helpful, too, since I started off, and I've said this many times on the other podcasts, it's completely different now. I play games, but I wasn't on the Nintendo. I did play the Game Boy DS, the Switch, the 64, and all that. So I didn't really start on PlayStation until I actually got with my husband about 6 years ago. 5-ish years ago now. We figured that out now.
Yeah, pretty much.
We done fucked up. 5 years ago.
And for me, doing a Sega podcast would be irrelevant.
Well, Sega's just irrelevant, but...
Nowadays, yeah, unfortunately. But I do primarily play PlayStation, but I really do adore the Switch.
It'd be like us trying to do a podcast about the Xbox.
And not own one?
Yeah.
That'd be hilarious.
That'd be great. You need to listen to it. Why the fuck are they talking about this game they've never played before?
Yeah, Xbox.
Wait, that's everyone else's opinion around the world. Shit.
Yeah, pretty much.
But no, I'm more gonna be kind of not necessarily the lead on this one because I am Nintendo and I'm super excited about some games coming out on the Switch and everything. But we figured we'd start off with Nintendo and their consoles. What worked, what didn't work, and what wish would have worked.
Yeah. And we'll give you a little bit of a teaser. The next episode, we're just going to dive into then...
more of the franchise.
Yeah, Nintendo franchises and characters. So Mario, Donkey Kong, Zelda, Link.
Tacos.
all the famous Nintendo characters and stuff.
Yeah.
Their first party kind of lineup. But yeah, today we're going to start with Nintendo consoles, talk about our favorites, our favorite games, ones that flopped, like the Wii U and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then how much we like the Switch and why we're doing this. So.
Exactly.
So I'll have you lead and kind of take it. Where did you start with Nintendo, and then whatever console that may be, what are some of your favorite games on it, and why did you enjoy it?
Of course. So I started off actually not console. Obviously, we all started off with Nintendo. The actually Game Boy for me, Game Boy Color, and then moved to the Game Boy, not Game Boy, but the 64 is the actual console I started with.
Yeah, handhelds I think count in that kind of discussion.
Well, with Nintendo
I talk about the Vita and the PSP on our PlayStation ones. So.
Well, especially with the Nintendo is obviously very hardcore known for handhelds and stuff, and kind of dominated for the longest time.
Oh, they still do.
And so, but the one I started was the Game Boy Color. Was the purple one, clear purple one. No, it wasn't Game Boy. It was Game Boy Advance. It wasn't color yet.
The Game Boy Colors were colored. They had the hard plastic colors.
Yeah.
The original Game Boy was translucent, but that was in black and white. The Game Boy Advance, which would be more oblong, they had some of the more translucent ones.
Yeah, I've had all.
There was a purple
systems.
one. There was a translucent one.
I had the one where I think just the original Game Boy wasn't color because I played Pokemon Yellow on that. That's where I started.
Yeah, that'd be original Game Boy.
So I played on the original Game Boy, and then obviously times and stuff. The 64 was out, so the console I started with, and the games I enjoyed so much playing was the actually Mortal Kombat.
That's funny.
With my siblings, because Pokemon games weren't on the consoles themselves; they were particularly just on the handheld, which makes sense.
That was happening until this newest generation on a Switch. So.
And they had some side little oddity games for Pokemon, like they had like Pokemon, their version of Pokemon Arena, where you would not necessarily catch Pokemon, but you'd battle them and you'd do photo shoots and something silly like that.
Well, they had like Pokken Tournament was big.
Pokken Tournament, that's what I was thinking about, because I was thinking Arena. Pokken Tournament's the one I played on
like
the
the
console.
fighting one,
Mm-hmm.
That was
and I fought against my brother, of course, because I had a bunch of siblings, so we always played and fought against each other. And our first 64 was a clear green one that I had.
Those ones are cool. I like those. Mm-hmm. The form factor for that console and like how they looked and stuff and all the bright colors and stuff, I always like that. They really stood out because like Genesis was kind of like blocky. Yeah. I mean, like Super Nintendo time.
Yeah.
And Super Nintendo, I guess, was too. And then like PS1 was just like, it was just a great brick. Like I have the slim PS1.
Yeah.
Which was just PS1 with one spelled out. That was the only difference. And I still have that one. It's like hooked up, but it was a ASInquisitor. That one looks a lot slicker, but the 64 in particular, like had good form factor. It looked cool. It always had awesome colors and stuff. Like, what color do you have? Like, I remember my friends talking about that.
So it was a color game, with the 64. And the cool part, though, is, like, I remember, obviously, I guess when I first dove into Zelda was Ocarina of Time on the 64. Because it was originally my brother's game, but we always shared anyway. So he wouldn't let me play when he wasn't playing in between.
That's like your Final Fantasy.
Yeah, that's my.
Because I would have been playing it at the same time, the PS1 and Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
Was like my Zelda.
Yeah, that would have been my Final Fantasy, because it's like Danny would play it, my brother, and then I would start playing a little bit after him. Of course, he'd be ahead of me, and I get stuck. I'm like, how'd you defeat this? And he'd tell me, of course, because he's the big brother, and obviously we didn't have the interwebs and you
gotta figure it out on your own.
Shit's not relatively.
And if you have siblings, like older siblings, like in that instance, it's like they're
figure it out together, or he
there's your walkthrough.
Yeah. We'd figure it out together, or he would tell me how he defeated it. You know. Which is funny if you think about generation wise. Ollie's always gonna have.
He looks stuff up.
He looks stuff up, and us
or
is like,
you could ask your dad. Like he probably beat it.
With us, it's like we had to fucking figure that shit out on our own, or to go find a friend, the one friend alone in the corner who's defeated.
Oh yeah. You talk to people at school about stuff like that. Like if they had the same game, because it's like when you're a kid, you only got like a game, maybe two, if you're lucky. Yeah. Or your siblings did, and then it's like, you go to school and be like, how did you get past whatever boss or this level or whatever game it was?
The one funny part with Zelda, like obviously throughout the ages and stuff, the one hardest part I've ever had with it was on the DS, the 3DS. I can't remember which map it was. I think it was the one where he's on the boat. It wasn't Spear Tracks, it was something like that. And to get the map, I didn't know you had to close the clamshell, but not all the way, and the map would hop off onto the other side.
Oh, that's tricksy. And
I'm like,
I wouldn't have known that.
How the fuck do you do this shit? And
that's not intuitive at all.
Try to draw, wouldn't let me draw, wouldn't stay. I needed this symbol so I can get in this fucking area, and I needed this to progress the game. It would boggle my brain. And my one friend was playing at the same time. She's like, just don't close it all the way. And I'm like, and it hopped over. I'm like, you son of a bitch. You know? Never would have thought they'd have done that. But like the same concept, a friend who was playing at the same time has already beat that part. And then
I never would have done that. Yeah, that would have boggled my mind too.
You gotta close the clamshell, but don't close it all the way. And it will hop off onto the other side. Who would have thought?
So weird. Yeah, using like the altimeter in those old handhelds. That's weird.
And so it's just like kind of progressed from there. And so obviously I feel like Nintendo has always had the corner market for handhelds. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only one that even remotely came close to giving them a run for their money was Sony, and the PSP, just because you could hack it, you could homebrew stuff on there like crazy, sold really well. And the Vita, personally, I find to be like probably the best handheld ever made, but they just never gained traction. So.
No, because you have Nintendo.
There's hardcore Vita lovers, but
is that the thing too?
That was also in the heyday of like the 3DS. So.
Yeah, And it's like, that's the other thing, too, like, Nintendo, it's like, they have obviously very corner marketed games.
Oh, yeah, and they have dominated the handheld market. Even I had a Game Boy Color. It was, when I was a kid, it was like a gift from my grandmother, and I had the turquoise one, and I played Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons over and over and over again. Yeah, they were some of my favorites, and I had some other random games too. I had like a Scooby-Doo like mystery game and stuff.
Oh yeah, it's the Scooby-Doos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
I remember playing Scooby-Doo on PlayStation, but that's, you know.
And then I would go over to friends' houses and stuff who had 64. I had one friend in particular when we were growing up who so like I lived in like a city away from the school that I went to. So like I lived like just, it was technically a county address, but I was really close to a city called Airway Heights here in Washington, and then the school I went to though was in Cheney, which is like a distance away. It's like another city away, and you drive through also another really small town called Four Lakes on the way to Cheney. So I would drive through 3 cities
just to get to school.
Just to get to school.
You'd be bored.
Yeah. But anyways, a lot of the friends I had like growing up when I was going to school in Cheney lived in Cheney, and so they all knew each other really well. And then Cheney's not a huge town. There's like 9,000 people there. It's really small, but because they grew up out there and had houses and stuff out there, they're all real close to one another.
Yeah, yeah.
You could go to a friend's house by just like walking, you know. It was like easy,
right there.
It wasn't an hour drive, but. Yeah, I would go over to my buddy's house and stuff, and I'd spend the night, and sometimes he'd have other friends over, other mutual friends of ours over and stuff, and we would play GoldenEye. Like GoldenEye all the time. Like, and I loved James Bond even then, and then it was such a fantastic shooter, and so I loved playing that. I thought that was like a blast. So that was really my only touch into the 64.
Yeah.
Because I had a PS1 at the time. And then... later, same kind of thing. I was in high school. I had another friend who lived real close to the high school campus and stuff, where you could we could go over for lunch.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we'd go over for lunch, and he had a GameCube. So we'd play games on his GameCube.
Obviously, of course, I played Zelda, and then my one I love Animal Crossing was another. A big thing for me too is Zelda, Animal Crossing and stuff, and other odd games. But it was always Animal Crossing was just like.
I remember people talking about Animal Crossing it was like that. It was like Animal Crossing. It was like Super Smash Brothers. Was another big one that was talked about a lot. GoldenEye, of course, the 64.
Yeah.
Mario Party was another big one. Yeah, because they were all just like couch co-op games, and they're just super fun.
If you think about it too, the Nintendo is more known for family consoles.
Oh yeah, well, especially with their first party characters and just how they're designed and the types of games that they are. They really, I mean, Xbox was kind of known for like straight into like dark, you're doing like sci-fi shooters and stuff with like Halo, and then PlayStation was. They were kind of a mixed bag. I mean, they had a little bit of everything. They had some like very definitive like platformers like Crash Bandicoot, and even like Spyro was on there and stuff like that. Jack and Daxter later that were more family friendly for sure, but then a lot of their first party stuff, especially nowadays, it's gotten a lot more serious and more mature and like darker. But yeah, Nintendo's always had a good.
Always family.
Oh yeah, and there are sometimes where they just couldn't get, and they've usually traditionally been kind of bad about this, but getting third-party support from outside studios and publishers.
They would do things. They were a cartridge for the longest time, and then they were the tiny baby discs, and then they went to the original DVD disc Blu-ray thing.
Yeah, it was DVDs for the Wii. I don't think they've never had a Blu-ray console.
No,
which is crazy.
I'm just saying in general.
And now they're back to cartridges.
Well, what do you mean? It's not,
although third-party support for the Switch is great. I mean, you're getting a lot of like serious things.
Well, you are now, but if you think about it, it's a lot easier to port in things compared to what it was back then, because it was
graphics-wise, they're pretty close. So
and Nintendo just does whatever the fuck Nintendo wants. They're like, I'm gonna do cartridges.
Yeah, it just kind of finally like the overall hardware has caught up. So even though it's like a far weaker console, it's like good enough. Like you can get it to work. You know, you can get like The Witcher 3 is on the Switch.
Exactly.
And so it's like, even though that game's gigantic, obviously you have to make some consolidations to get it on that platform, but you know, you can do it. You can have your Doom, your Wolfenstein, your Witcher, alongside Mario, Zelda, and Donkey Kong, which is kind of interesting.
No, that's a sentence you thought you'd never say.
Yeah, they haven't really been able to do that in the past. They've tried,
yeah,
but they've either been like so many years late that it's like, well, I don't want to play a Call of Duty from 3 years ago on my Wii.
Yeah, on my Wii of all things. And that's just like the test of time with like consoles anyway. It's always running into issues and problems and stuff. And
yeah, people buy Nintendo consoles and play Nintendo consoles primarily for their awesome first party lineup.
And that's what I mean. It's like,
I mean, you want that new Zelda game, you want that new Mario game, you want the new Donkey Kong. You have to have Nintendo to play it. Yeah, and it's like they have so many great first party
never really
characters and titles. So.
Ported their own off of their console ever.
No, I mean they just recently, within the last couple of years, straight into the mobile market. And even then, they're not letting like other studios do their work. It's all in house still, and it's like, here's Mario Run on you know your iPhone or whatever.
Well, we just played Dr. Mario on our iPhone, and then freaking Animal Crossing.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a slew of them now where you can play.
But then again, we're not playing Animal Crossing on a PlayStation though.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. Well, and first party, it's just kind of like that to begin with. I mean, you're not playing Uncharted on a Nintendo or an Xbox, and you're also not playing Halo. Microsoft and what they're doing with their franchises will probably bleed over sooner than anyone else's.
True.
Like you'll probably I would bet that within at least the next 10 years, like you'll play Halo, Gears of War on a PlayStation or Nintendo console.
For sure, definitely.
They're a little bit more open about. Software sales, and that's where they make their money.
It's software.
Yeah, and so it makes a little more sense. I think the Japanese companies like Sony and Nintendo are more like they're gonna keep a tight lid on their characters, their IPs, like and where it goes to help sell consoles. So.
True, and the funny thing is their advancement in consoles and just how vastly because they've always all have been a handheld, and how that hybrid came to be with, you know, the Switch and the Wii.
Oh yeah, they're ingenious because they took what, like you pointed out, what they did best, a market they've dominated with handhelds, and then they blended with what they've done definitely decently. They've always held their own. They've never really had to worry about money.
Yeah,
they've always just kind of gone by the beat of their own drum.
Aren't they the company that can last forever on?
That was the big thing. So when they released the Wii U, a lot of people pointed out, it was a flop. They were just kind of stuck in this in-between generation as, you know, especially the PS4 was doing really, really well. And nobody was buying Wii U's. And I think Nintendo's publicly traded, or there's just economic analysis of their company.
Yeah.
But they have what they call the Nintendo War Chest or the Nintendo War Coffer, where it's they have so much money from all these handhelds and stuff and their first party characters, and it was they could run a company without selling anything for 10 years straight.
Jeez, that's insane.
They could pay their staff, they could pay, they could keep the power on, they could, they're leasing buildings or whatever it may be, what their basic overhead is.
They can last.
They could just last. They're one of the few companies that could take a hit like that and it wouldn't fold them like it did, Sega back in the day or anything like that. Which is impressive.
If you just think about how badass is that?
It's super badass. They've obviously, even with a misstep, have managed their company very well.
Yeah.
And you gotta think too, it's Sony's an old brand. Microsoft is even kind of considered an old brand now. They're the newest kids on the block.
Nintendo's been around for a long ass time.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo was formed in the 1800s as a playing card game. They did playing cards. That's what they did. I mean, and then it was, not until the 80s, obviously, that they did the NES. But by the time they got around to making the very first Nintendo console, they had been around for 100 years.
Exactly.
A company that existed for 100 years, I'm sure they're good at managing their finances.
Nah, they're fine. It's fine. Yeah. So it's just funny, like you were saying, too, the ingeniousness they made with
hybrid console?
The Switch.
Yeah. They used, all their greatest strengths. They've cornered that handheld market so well for so long, starting with the Game Boy all the way to the 3DS. And, Sony may have tried, but I'm not saying they even came close to winning.
Yeah.
It was just they were the only ones that lasted at least, 2 handhelds. Like, that's more than anybody else could do.
True.
But that doesn't mean they took a dent,
from
Nintendo at all.
Oh, no.
And so they took what they knew, what they were good at, and then they combined that with, what some people might say hit or miss consoles.
Yep.
And burst something like wholly unique that none of the other companies could do, and it works. And it works well. And you can play it on the go. It's got a beautiful screen, but you can easily just dock it and play on your TV. Like, it's very seamless, and you're getting AAA games in handheld form.
There's no lag at all, especially if you have to put it in the dock. It's just not lagged in the slightest. Like you would think if you plug something in that's removable, like a handheld or something.
Yeah, because it's technically running off the piece that you're removing.
Yeah, not...
It might have some issues, but it's like there is some hardware in that base too, and so it's like, but yeah, all that tech works really well together, and there's no glitchiness, there's no weirdness to it. Yeah, I may have knocked the Joy-Cons and stuff, but as a solution for that, that's really smart too.
Well, yeah, they have which they wouldn't talk about the Joy-Cons on this podcast.
No.
The big solution was they have the wireless or the wired old school Nintendo controllers.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a cool throwback. If
Absolutely.
you think about it, it's like, oh, cool, I can actually have this. For granted, now it's like an 8-foot wire, thank God, not a 3-foot wire.
Yeah, you don't have to sit on the floor right in front of the TV.
You know what?
You can be on the couch.
I will still sit on the floor and play my 64 and play Zelda, okay?
Well, yeah. Well, I do the same thing. The Sega controllers, especially with the Genesis, are notoriously short. I gotta be right there.
Get itty right there, the guy. But no, it's just amazing. For granted, like you said, you don't need that kidney. They flopped with the Wii U. They wanted the Wii U to be the Switch, but whatever reason it did, the dots just didn't connect, the lines didn't coalesce.
Yeah, I don't know if marketing just bungled the whole thing, or if it was part of that and R&D or tech. No, and I never did, and I only knew one person who bought one way after the fact.
But it's we have...
Or 2 people, I guess.
We have literally...
John had one, too.
Yeah, we have the 64, we have the GameCube, we have the Wii U, and the Switch.
Oh, yeah. We
Wii
have pretty much the entire Nintendo lineup. We have the entire Sega lineup. We have the entire PlayStation lineup. Except for the Wii U. Out of those 3 companies.
And I just don't ever see...
That's the only console where it's nah, not interested.
Yeah, and like you said, I feel like people are really confused. They're like, is it an add-on to the Wii? Is it part of the Wii? Why is this Wii U? Why is there a screen on it? What am I doing with it?
Yeah, that's what I said. There's something bungled there. I know marketing was a huge part of it, but I have a feeling that hardware-wise too, it was they wanted to be able to get to the Switch, but for whatever reason they just hadn't R&D'd enough, or maybe parts weren't small enough yet, or something along those lines. Where
well, it's how they brought back the cartridge.
Didn't coalesce. Yeah, and a lot of, one of the big selling points of new consoles coming out this year with the PS5 and the Xbox is they're solid state drives. Those are cartridges. It's they are. They finally got cheap enough. They can hold enough memory.
Yeah.
And then you don't have any moving parts, so wear and tear is less, and then they're
Can't
faster.
You're
faster to access that information
on
those kind of cartridges.
Yeah, you're not scratching the surface of the DVD, and it's no longer working for you anymore.
Exactly. Plus, it's there are RPMs to that Blu-ray or DVD beforehand. Yeah, and so it's you have moving parts because of that.
Yep.
To make it move even, and. The longer you move, you're gonna wear down. It's gonna break down eventually. The little plastic pieces are gonna snap, or the Blu-ray
it's gonna melt.
Diodes in the PS3 were notorious for going out, which is the most expensive part to that machine. But yeah, it's cool to see. It's Nintendo's really going back to their roots and then just combining everything that they know.
Yep.
And have done really well with, and then they package it all in one system. And then on top of it, they've been really great with their fans by giving them the games they want.
Exactly.
It's here's a new Zelda, here's a new Mario, here's a new, okay, we're going to port Donkey Kong. And
there's even new Animal Crossing.
New Animal Crossing going. You want Pokemon on a console? Here you go. It's always been handheld, and it's that's pretty cool.
It's still technically handheld, which is even cooler.
Well, yeah, which is a valid point. So,
and it's they even got their own on that, plus the Switch Lite, which is just kind of hilarious because people were it almost crossed in the Wii U situation. We're like, no. Switch Lite is just a handheld.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, because I think they're playing the long game there because there could be muddled messaging. Or it's like, well, does the 3DS still have a place?
Yeah.
In the Nintendo family? And it's like, well, not really
We're
anymore.
retiring this, and then you get the Switch Lite, which can play the Switch games, but it's
so they've been a little reserved actually saying that, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, they're just retiring it.
It's like, oh no, you can have a Lite.
Yeah.
If you want just a handheld experience, like, get this. It's cheaper. Like, you can play a lot of the same games on it. Most of the same games. And, you know, it's going to be a more, a handheld for you. But if you want our home console, it can do both. So,
exactly.
You know,
which
it's whatever you want kind of a thing.
I know, it's funny to think, because we even have, like you said, a Dreamcast and everything. It's just like, nope, no Wii U. Don't want it.
No, yeah, it's like right now we have a Sega Dreamcast, a N64, a PS1, a PS4, and a Sega Genesis and a Sega Saturn, all hooked up, but not a Wii U. Well, we have a Wii too, because the Wii and the Switch.
Yeah, because I use the Wii all the time.
Because those are on top. I was thinking all the ones in our entertainment center.
Yeah, those are on top.
But we have such a spectrum of like companies and age of consoles.
Just Sony and
but it's like Sony, Sega, Nintendo. And Sega's been out of the game for 20 years.
Yep.
You know, so it's like
it's
that's just because it's a personal favorite of mine. Is the only reason those consoles are hooked up.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's Sony and Nintendo here.
And it's just, I love it too. It's just Nintendo. It's just, I don't know why. Because my brother had a PlayStation 2, and I just didn't like it. I like the niche of Nintendo.
Yeah, and I really liked the PS2. Like, that was definitely my jam. I didn't get a Nintendo console till the Wii. So I went from, like, NES, Super Nintendo, and then it was, like, PS1, PS2, and then I had, like, PS3 and a Wii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that generation, though, I had all three consoles.
Just because you're weird.
Yeah.
But the Wii is still legit, and it's like, it's so advanced in its own right too. It's just weird.
Oh yeah, I mean, you gotta think too. It's like Nintendo's always gone by the beat of their own drums. They've done kind of whatever they've wanted, and they've sometimes flopped with like the Wii U, but more often than not,
they're successful.
They're really successful and done something new. And immediately afterwards, Microsoft and Sony both like introduced motion controls to their consoles.
No, because we
you got PlayStation Move, and you got like Project Nadal or the Kinect with Xbox.
Exactly.
And they tried to work in motion controls into their own. And now it's funny because like in Sony's case, you use Wii, obviously motion controls, and then the Wii Wand, and then Sony and Microsoft copy that essentially to try to work it in their own platforms. And now Sony uses those motion control wands for VR. Exactly. So it was like Nintendo pioneered it, and then because Sony had made this like tool that didn't work for Microsoft or Sony very well or take off, they ended up incorporating whatever they are indeed for the PlayStation Move into their PlayStation VR headset. Exactly. And it was like that. That probably would have been a long ways out. Or far more expensive to develop if the Wii didn't exist and have its motion controls and create that fad.
And it's just insane that it did. It's like started that fad and stuff. For granted, like the Switch isn't like that now.
Yeah. Well, but it was like it was for its time. I mean, it just worked. And like you look at like the top consoles ever sold. Like just every console ever made, lifetime sales. Most of them are PlayStation, except for the Wii. Wii's just like smack dab in the middle of there. And then if you throw in handhelds, that really fucks up the list because the handhelds top the list too. Oh yeah, and they're all Nintendo handhelds. So it's like Nintendo handhelds, Wii, and then PlayStation main consoles. That's it. Those are like there's your top 10. Like
that's what you get right there. No, I just think it's really amazing how they're able to combine in the Switch, the handheld, and the console in one.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, they did what nobody else could do.
When you think about it too,
or even tried to do. So.
Right, and that's true too. It's still considered a console too because they have their little cartridges they brought back.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's. I mean, that's how I primarily play it. It's like I have my handhelds, and I have a 3DS too. Yeah. I have a 3DS, PSP, and a Vita, and those are my handhelds. Yep. Those are like on my bedside table, and if I want to play a game at night, that's what I'm gonna play. Yeah. And then the Switch I use, and I know not everybody does this. That's it. It's amazing because of its versatility.
Yeah, of course.
But for me, I use it as a home console.
Basically a home console. Only time you ever do is when like I said, I take over and I need to use the Wii, and
then if I'm playing a game on the Switch, I'll use it in handheld mode because it's like, there's the stopgap.
Exactly.
I can use it for 20 minutes.
You're like, I'm already in a good part, or I really want to pause it, but I want to use the TV for something else, and you're like, okay, well, I'll just take it off the dock and
and then I can play it. So which is ingenious. It's so great.
It's
There's so many people that can throw that in their bag on the go, or if they have like commutes and stuff, like train commutes or bus commutes or whatever it may be, or you're on a flight. Yeah. It's like you can take it with you and play the newest Zelda or
Mario or
even these great third-party games that have come over like Wolfenstein and Doom, or if you want to get into The Witcher that way.
Yeah,
I played a lot of games that way too.
Well, yeah, they even have Resident Evil on there now, Devil May Cry.
Yeah, they're slowly releasing those. Yeah, their e-store's really good. And they've even, that's the other thing, I've never been a huge Microsoft or Xbox fan. They've had some really awesome indie games that have come out on that platform.
Yeah, but
like Cuphead and stuff, but now they're on the Switch.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'll just play them on the Switch then.
Exactly, so it's like...
Hollow Knight, I think, was another one, and that might have been all over the place.
It'd be funny if Gears of War came out on the Switch.
Yeah, I mean, and Microsoft would be the one to do it. They would be the one to get their software in the hands of other companies and not be less worried about it. Because for them, they're like, we're going to sell more.
Yeah, true.
And when we make money on software, so okay.
It's like we're going to sell it regardless. So we're not really super worried about it anyway, so don't worry.
Yeah, and I think for Sony and Nintendo, they both want to use their first-party studios and properties to sell consoles.
Yeah, exactly.
Microsoft already bridges the gap between like their console and the PC as it is.
Yeah.
So it's like they're already on two different places. It's not
just one like Nintendo and Sony are.
Yeah, and it's like there are some Sony games that go over to PC, but they're not first party games. It's second party at best.
If anything.
Third party, that's up to them. I mean, those are completely different studios and publishers. So
exactly. So it's like really their decision of what they want to do, how they want to go.
Yeah, but they're not beholden to whatever platform.
Yeah, and it's just insane to see it, and I love how Nintendo's growth has gone, and that they didn't just stop with the Wii U, that they did finally what they wanted. Like you said, they were just trying to be too much technology too soon. It's no different than how Nintendo 64, they didn't want to go away from cartridges due to the fact because they knew the spinning parts and stuff, and even then when they did bring CDs, it was the game, the Cube.
Yeah.
And there was a little bit of a fuck you because they're itty bitty baby discs.
Well, and then it wasn't like the same reason. Like now, because there's so many moving parts, because these machines are a lot more complicated, that's something to worry about. Then, not so much. It was storage and cost.
Yeah.
So it was cheap to mass produce, like CDs, DVDs, and then eventually Blu-rays. And they held more data. Yeah. Cartridges were expansive.
Well, yeah, but that's a benefit.
Which is crazy. Yeah. They just want to control that market, and PS1 unfortunately did really well. Yeah. So a lot of people don't know this story, but Sony wasn't going to come out with a console. That wasn't their initial idea. So they had an engineer that worked for them that came up with an add-on for, I think it was the Super Nintendo. It might have been almost like a dev kit for the 64. But regardless, they had an add-on that was disc-based. Yeah. Because they knew that it was going to be cheaper, you could hold more. Yeah, exactly. And so they wanted to team up with Nintendo, this engineer in particular did. And he kind of went rogue within his own company to do this, by the way. And they actually had Nintendo and Sony had a tentative relationship, and they were going to do a hybrid console together.
Oh, that's insane.
Yeah, and there is one prototype that exists that was just up for auction recently.
Holy shit. I probably went for a pretty penny.
Yeah, it was some astronomical amount. There's a lot of people that are a little upset about it, hoping that it makes its way to a museum, a video game history.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's a one of a kind. You don't want people let's look it up and play it,
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's how that relationship was brokered was they were going to complement one another, and Sony was obviously more tech inclined just because of their own company, and Nintendo was more home video game console. Exactly. That's the market they existed in, and so they were going to have a hybrid console together. Yeah. Which that would have changed the face of everything if that had gone through. But because of that discrepancy between wanting to use cartridges versus discs, Sony ended up pushing forward and they're doing their own console.
Isn't that crazy to think though? How that's the reason Sony kind of came to birth.
Yeah. So the PS1 exists because the Nintendo Sony deal fell through. That's the only reason.
I know.
And then Sony had a good portion of the hardware already done because they were working on that add-on with Nintendo, and so they birthed their own console, and now you look at them 25 years later, and it's like they're
huge.
top dog. They're huge. Like they have some of the highest selling consoles ever.
Could you imagine if it would have went the other way? They're like,
But a lot of these stories that we're bringing up when we're talking about is how Nintendo influenced. Whether it was a competitor at the time or not, it would be competitor or a direct competitor. So it's like with the Wii motion controls that gave Microsoft and Sony gave birth to their own motion controls because of it. That eventually led Sony to use it in their VR. All because of Nintendo. And then you look at this story. And it's like Sony's consoles only exist because of Nintendo. Like, because they were, not first, but they were the first popular one.
Yeah, and they, like I said, wanted to keep cartridges, which they essentially brought back with the Switch.
Yeah. And it's and now, the technology and hardware has changed where it's like, we worry more about wear and tear and moving parts. And then it's faster.
Yep.
To access the little cartridges now, and they can hold just as much, if not more.
Exactly.
Than a Blu-ray disc. So.
Which is funny to think that though.
Then it came full circle.
Yeah,
but for different reasons.
Yeah.
There's different issues at the time that it didn't work, so they had to switch. And now there's different issues, and so now it switched back.
Exactly.
Yeah, just because of how the technology grew.
Well, yeah, the thing how big games are getting and shit like that. It's like.
And that was kind of like they were moving into more. During that generation with the N64 and the PS1, 3D games.
Yeah.
So it's like those file sizes were
getting bigger.
Way bigger than, 2D sprites.
No 2D sprite.
And so that was kind of the main thing. Is like, well, we can hold more on our discs. Like, we should use discs. Like, we're going to have to store a lot more information on here because this is 3D now.
Yeah.
And so, and N64 was like,
nah.
At the time.
It's still in the N64 is still like, we could cool.
I've never heard any stories, but I do wonder why the Nintendo GameCube used mini discs. I wonder why they didn't go all in.
I'm gonna go.
And then the Wii used discs.
I'm going with my favorite things. Like, here, bitches, we put it on a disc, and it's a little dude.
I don't know. I don't think. I mean, I could be wrong. I was young, but I don't think people really cared if it was. No. I think probably kids thought it was cool that it was on a disc instead of a cartridge because you'd seen the same thing for so long. Yeah. That it was probably kind of like a fad. Like, oh, that's awesome.
Just so you know, the GameCube's not a cube.
No, it's not.
They lied.
Yeah.
Bitches.
It's like
a rectangle.
Yeah.
Essentially.
It's a rectangular polygon. Like, it is weird, and it has its little handle. Why does it have a handle?
You can carry it around.
Why would you want to carry it around?
There's a handheld.
I thought that was so weird.
I took it everywhere. Go to a friend's house. You take your fucking GameCube with you.
Oh, I didn't see. I never really took consoles to other people's houses, so that's why.
Well, that's because you're selfish.
Well, no, they always had their own.
Whatever.
They're just different ones. It's like handhelds and stuff.
That's what I mean. I was like, my friend didn't have this. They wanted to play this game. I have this.
Well, we do swap games or memory cards and stuff. We do that all the time.
Not swap games or anything. I would bring over my GameCube.
We also forget about that too. We had memory cards for everything.
Oh yeah.
Like if you want to save a game, you had to pop in a memory card for the longest time. Make sure that you had enough blocks open to be able to save and shit.
I know, right?
Then you had to worry about third-party memory cards and even the GameCube,
Oh yeah, it did.
And then one of the other drawbacks to cartridges, especially at the time, especially with the NES and the Super Nintendo, any of the cartridge-based ones around that time, they have battery packs in them.
Oh yeah.
Only way you can save is if it allows you to save, but if the battery pack goes out, it's toast. You have to replace the battery in it, or passcodes. Passcodes was before memory cards, but. You get to a certain level and then you get a code and you write it down in the manual and then you put the code in if you want to go to level 2 on Echo the Dolphin or whatever you're playing.
Okay, Echo the Dolphin, calm down now.
I will bring up Echo the Dolphin on a podcast to the day I die.
What are you saying? My cat's on my chair.
Fucking Echo the Dolphin. Yeah, that's right. Fucking Echo the Dolphin. Look at me like that.
I was hearing the horror stories where you and Echo the Dolphin screaming at your TV. It's fucking dolphin, dude.
You never even played it. You don't even know.
You're showing me the game.
I've seen you yell at Ocarina of Time, so don't even go there.
The fucking water temple. Oh my god.
You've been sitting cross-legged playing the N64 and just getting like pissed. Again, you played and beaten.
Actually, world-renowned secret, I've never beaten a game.
Ever?
Ever.
No, that's a lie.
What game? Okay, with you doesn't count.
No, there's one you've done on your own. I know you have.
What?
Virginia.
Oh.
Such a random fucking game to beat, too, by the way. I know you beat that game, though, and you did it on your own.
Okay, one game.
Virginia.
Out of nearly 30 years of my life.
I like how, too, it's like you're this huge Zelda, like, Pokemon fan.
Never
and
finished
then Virginia. That's, who says that?
You.
No,
Never.
right.
Yeah.
I've beat plenty of games.
I've never beat a game. Never.
I even 100% games regularly.
Nope. Only time I've ever done is like with you. Other than that, nope. Never beaten a game that matters.
So has there been games we played together that we've 100%? Or not 100%, but finished?
Yeah, like Overcooked and...
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we did Overcooked together.
There's a couple little games we've done together that we've 100%ed, but we've started games like Way Out or Breakout, the Breakout one, but never finished, and because it takes two people to do it, and
yeah,
other stuff like that.
That's design too.
Yeah, but it's like never finished a game on my own.
That's hilarious.
It's like Spirit Tracks. I've never finished the final boss. Never finished the final.
Virginia.
Shut up, Virginia.
That was a good game.
True. So, what made you still so interested in Nintendo since you're such a Sony person?
I don't know. I mean, I have fond memories of like really early Nintendo systems. In particular, like Super Mario World.
Yeah.
Like I played that. Like I've said this in another podcast at least once a year. Like,
True.
I'll play Super Mario World. I think of some of the other Super Metroid I played on the Super Nintendo. So I always kind of keep my eye on the Metroid franchise. I haven't played any of the other ones afterwards.
Yeah.
Like, there's like the Metroid Prime trilogy that everyone like raves about and stuff. I've never played that, unfortunately. My first foray into like Castlevania was on the Super Nintendo.
Okay.
Like Metal Gear Solid. I played Metal Gear on the NES. So a lot of these long-running like franchises that I absolutely love, like I started playing them. Crystalis got me into RPGs back in the day, and Fox Xanadu was on the NES as well. Really old and sometimes really obscure like RPGs I played on the NES. I love Metal Gear all the way through 4.
Yeah.
Started on the NES. I didn't play Final Fantasy, which was originally on Nintendo consoles. Castlevania, though, like I already played through all of those. But yeah, I mean, there's all these like great franchises, and forget it may have been third party or not.
Yeah.
I played on Nintendo consoles first. And so then it was more like the allurement of like 3D, and then I played Final Fantasy VII on the PS1 that got me on the PS1 track. And then I think Sony's done a really good job, just in the same way Nintendo has. I think less iconic just because they haven't been around as long.
Yeah.
And they kind of switched stuff up too. But then it was like I got to play Crash Bandicoot, Jack and Daxter, Uncharted, Last of Us, God of War, like things like that. And it was, even though really dark, very different tone, different style of gameplays, it reminded me of, it was like, oh, this is mature Nintendo.
Mature Nintendo.
Yeah. That's what Sony was. They're both Japanese companies. They both kind of do their own thing. Like, Sony plays it safe, like, quite a bit, but it's like, they're also the only one that have, like, PlayStation VR.
I like how Nintendo's like, fuck it. I'm gonna do what I
They
want.
also the only one that decided that it would be a good idea to, like, tackle Nintendo handhelds.
Yep.
Who thought that was a great idea? Like, I loved that they did it, and those handhelds are awesome, but it's like...
They're dead now.
Yeah, like, who thought that was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, they've been around for, like, at that point, 15 years, 20 years doing this. Like, we can take them on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's ballsy.
It's been around
So Sony does certain things, too. But I always thought it was, like, the more mature version of... So as I was starting to mature as a gamer, that's kind of why I went to Sony. But,
You saying I'm not mature?
No, I'm saying
Son of a
don't
bitch.
knock the hustle. Like, always remember where you came from. Like, so I always remember Nintendo. Like, that's where I got like my gaming start was that.
Yeah.
And then it was, then the Genesis and then PlayStation. So,
That's such a weird leap from games.
oh yeah, it was like NES, Genesis, when I had a Genesis, my stepdad at the time had a Super Nintendo, so that's why I got to play that a lot. And then PS1, and then it was like PS1, 2, 3, 4, and then like Switch, and then I had a Wii in there. Wii
in there somewhere. You have a GameCube too.
I do now, yeah. I got that way later though. That was one of when I was like collecting consoles and games. But yeah, so I've always had like a distinct love of Mario because of that. A lot of these big third-person franchises that just kept going for ages. You know, why like Capcom and, you know, I used to like Konami, but like the older Metal Gear Solid games, like Hideo Kojima, which then you get Death Stranding on the PS4. So there's this kind of thorough line that like always starts with Nintendo that leads through all these other consoles or companies or game franchises or even characters.
Or even ideas.
Or ideas like motion controls and stuff that, you know, all roads lead back to Nintendo. And so, and for me personally, as a gamer with my own, you know, perspective on the gaming industry, or like again franchises and consoles, tastes and things like that, they all lead back to Nintendo. They just do. Yeah. Like, I mean, and there's older gamers for sure that it's like for them, it's, you know, the Atari or it's the.
We're in that weird middle ground of it not beginning, but it beginning of consoles.
Definitely, yeah, a popular video gaming
industry,
like this is where the NES is where it starts.
Yeah, honestly, it does. If you think about it,
there's just a couple of smaller examples that existed alongside, you know, arcades, like the Atari 2600 and the Commodore 64, which were more the progenitor to the NES definitely would be the Atari 2600. The Commodore 64 is even older than that, but more like PC in structure with how we would view it, at least. And, you know, the great video game Crash was right in there as well. And then it was like, NES was then like the start point after that.
Yeah, so like you think about it, they had all these competitors and branches off, but what's still here? Nintendo.
Yes, Nintendo's still here. It's like we talked about in one of our last episodes of Rage Quit about like the Atari Jaguar released in 1993. So Atari was obviously still overlapped with Nintendo, but it's like they were done after that. Yeah, I mean that was it. And so Nintendo kept going though.
Yeah, it did,
and it essentially gave birth to PlayStation.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
And then, you know, Sony's done really well, like, because of that. But it's like, one of their parents would be Nintendo. It just would be. It'd probably be the electronics division of their own company, you know, Sony Electronics. You know, like you pointed out, it's like you get the Sony Walkman, Discman, television, stuff like that. That was Sony. So they have, like, the hardware electronic side to it. Like, there's Dad, Mom's Nintendo. Like, it wouldn't exist otherwise. And then you get to see how that kind of influenced, like, just kept kind of going.
Yeah, it did.
Again, getting into later generations with, like, motion controls and stuff like that, or trying to compete with, you know, beat with Mom with the handhelds. And,
good luck.
And then you have, you know, the redheaded stepchild with Xbox, but
it is really the redheaded stepchild. Why did Xbox even try?
They've done really well for themselves, so
I have a feeling that they're not going to be around another 20 years.
It depends on what they want to do. I think they could compete. I don't think they're really kind of giving it their all, though. Like, I don't think they have for a while.
True. I think the Nintendo is just going to always be the badass mom, so.
It's kind of like any of the other companies competing software-wise, like with Microsoft. They're just not going to be able to do it. Yeah. Like, both Nintendo and Sony's user interface for their consoles notoriously sucks. Or it's super simplified. Yeah. Because it's like, imagine the Switch if you had like a ton of games on there. It's either going to be a block with blocks in it or a scrolling screen like the PlayStation is.
What do you mean my scrolling screen and my blocks of blocks lot?
It's like, it's just, it doesn't quite work. But Xbox being, or Microsoft being a software company, it's like they've had better user interfaces. They've had a better like online connectivity. They had achievements first. Like, their online kind of sphere and, like I said, network connectivity and programming and like software side. That's what they dominate. That's where they excel. Because they were a software company.
True.
They weren't a hardware company. Nintendo was a toy company.
They played card games.
Yeah, and so they did essentially toys for kids. And that's how you got the NES. It was video games. It was a toy. And
Which
obviously
is weird to
that
think
industry has evolved, quite a bit, so it's not considered that anymore.
Yeah.
And then Sony was hardware. So it was like, and you can see really the zenith of that with PlayStation 3, with how heavily R&D that was, how powerful it was, how it was difficult to code for, because it was like nobody had ever seen it before.
Yeah.
Or used anything like that, And so they all have their different roots and stuff, but I think gaming-wise, it all draws back to Nintendo.
Oh, the tree of life is Nintendo.
It just does,
May
yeah.
the great tree guide you.
Pretty much. I think it's like, it's Sony from Nintendo, Xbox from Sony, and then all the old guard fell off. Sega died off, Atari died off. Some of these independent consoles, like the TurboGrafx, died off.
And
they just couldn't cut it, So it's like the old guard passed the torch, and Nintendo was kind of in the mix of that, and were the only ones who remain, and then they kind of gave birth to their own competitors.
Isn't it weird to think that's in our lifetime?
Oh, yeah, it is interesting, dissecting and talking in depth about, the one Rage Quit episode we did about genres and subgenres. It is crazy to know that you've lived through the majority of it, if not all of it.
Yeah.
Because you can't say that about music.
Oh,
I've lived through all of music. All of American music.
I lived through all of art.
Yeah, all of writing.
I lived through all of the dog's ages.
Yeah, there's all these other, creative mediums where it's they're... Even if you're just talking specifically about, a country, their influence on music or art or writing, it's United States is super young, but it's so you live through the entirety of 1776 till 2020, and it's it's not feasibly possible. It's not physical.
I'm immortal.
But yeah, the video game industry, you can.
Yeah. No one else will. If you think about it, they'll see births and deaths of different consoles, but not the originals that started it.
No, they won't.
And then that's weird to think, because, or even our son won't have that, but he'll know mom and dad stories.
Oh, yeah. He'll have no idea what it was like playing on a CRT TV, or we're talking about, passcodes for
Channel 3!
saves. Yeah. Or memory cards, or wired controllers.
It'll blow in the cartridge. Get to work.
Yeah. It's he won't know any of that. Just old school cartridges, even.
It's you gotta play a game. If you're driving the Mario Kart, you gotta turn with it.
I think that's just a natural thing for gamers to do.
Turn with it.
But now when you play Mario Kart, you have to. You have to turn.
See? Exactly. That's why they're fucking with you. You're gonna do it anyways.
No, yeah, it is crazy, yeah, because it's the majority of this I've lived through and seen and played.
Yeah, exactly.
Every step of the way.
All right, I think that's a wrap.
Yeah, I think
house
that's it.
Cleaning.
Oh, what do we got? So I have to wait a few episodes to be able to get this on a lot of podcast services.
But we'll be on YouTube and Cashbox.
Yeah, Cashbox and YouTube for sure, right out the gate.
Yep.
And so I will probably just be plugging the YouTube link for a while.
Which makes sense, though.
But once we're 3 episodes in,
we'll be able to
and published, I can start submitting so we can have 64 Bits of Rage on all the other platforms that Rage Quit is already on.
Yeah.
It will be sooner than what Rage Quit did.
True.
But we do have to get 3 episodes in. That's just kind of a production thing.
Way.
Yeah. A lot of podcast hosting sites don't want you to flood their podcast directories and stuff with just one episode, and then you don't do it anymore. And so they would have tons of people that might do that, and then it would just be a smorgasbord of these random podcasts that don't matter because no one's producing them anymore.
Exactly.
So yeah, as soon as we're 3 episodes in, we'll be everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
Submit it to Spotify and iTunes and Google Play.
Oh yeah, super excited.
For now, we'll be on Castbox and YouTube, like Ariel said. So
we gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, look for us there. One of the other Castbox is free to download, and you can listen to podcasts there. And you can, if you're looking to make a switch, it's pretty seamless. I listen to a lot of podcasts through Castbox. Free to use. You can find anything.
Yep.
And then if not, just bring us up on YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah, if you're not already listening that way.
Yeah. Via 64 Bits of Rage, which is the best name ever.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you can kind of tool around the house and stuff and have our podcast up in the background on the TV.
Yeah.
So.
As always, I'm Ariel Schultz.
I'm Anthony Schultz.
Follow the bear.
Yeah, still I say.
Follow the bear.
Follow the bear.
Follow the bear.
Into the woods. Where there's an N64 controller.
Bell bears. All right. Bye, folks.
See ya.